last week about mindset. Mindset's one of those things that is talked about a lot of different ways, from spirituality to being an entrepreneur. But you have a very big belief that mindset plays such a pivotal role in the course of being an entrepreneur and so forth. What are some of the big things that stand out to you in in your experience from being a successful entrepreneur? For businesses that you've been a part of that have sold successfully and so forth. So there's a lot of experience that you have, but it's interesting to me that mindset plays such a big part in that. And what do you think is the biggest thing that stands out to you?
Yeah. Just kind of going through going through my 4 builds and exits of companies. 3 of them I actually started on my own. And then the 4th I came in with partners. I'm on my 5th now with my same 2 partners from the last exit we just had. We're 3 years in, and probably by the time this is out there, we may have actually sold the 5th company. So
nice.
We're kind of excited. We're in due diligence right now, and I'll knock on wood, but I don't want to ruin the microphone. But yes, so Craig, I'm 60 years old. I just turned 60. I still have it in me to build companies. The 5th company I'm in right now is a startup from 3 years ago, and we are prepared to sell. So it's kind of exciting. Now, take 2 steps back and let's talk about mindset. Mindset going through a hidden path, and if you look at the concept of the hidden path is not really knowing where you're going, but you're going forward. That's the key. So mindset really is about going forward. What does going forward mean? To me, it's about understanding some of the rules. And some of the rules are pretty interesting. And again, this is my philosophy. I have a little bit of a soapbox I can stand on. I've had success. But there's other ways. There's other entrepreneurs who have been successful in other ways. But looking at my philosophy on this, it's not my own philosophy. It's actually philosophy I've stolen from the mystics out there. But I'm really, I never realized this, but when I started reading The Road Less Traveled and all those books, and again, we talked about Road Less Traveled was not a business book.
Right.
It was a psychiatry book. But what I learned about it is I didn't realize that I was actually that I was being trained to be a stoic. I was trained to have that ability to not get too high, too low, and ride through the negative and the positive. So for me, there's about 4 areas for me that I like to talk about. One of them is failure is not permanent. People say that all the time, but it's true. I mean, unless you stay there. If you stay on the ground, you failed. If you get knocked down and get back up, you were down and now you're up. Success, I'm also going to go the other way. Success is not permanent either. Success is really based around the ability for us to actually look at what we've done in our lives and create something. But once it's done, and once you've created that, and once I sold my first company, I really had to start again. And yes, I used the same formula, but I started again and went through the process. So the failure and the success, and in between is the journey. And for me, the journey is probably the most fun. That's when you were working with me back 15 years ago. You were working with me, and I had my team, and I had my, we built this great company, and, I kind of gave my baby away. It was not an easy thing. It was a little depressing, believe it or not. People don't feel bad for a guy who sold his company and did well, but it was definitely a process I went through. And
bit bittersweet in a way, in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Totally.
Right.
Totally. So, so the first part of it is, really looking at failure and success. Nothing's permanent. It always moves around. The concept around being stoic is really, not buying into the fact that these things are going on and kind of remaining stoic. Enjoy the success, but don't get overboard and don't get depressed from the failure. Hate failure. I told you last episode, hate it. Don't love it. That's what's going to motivate you to move forward.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The other point, the other area I think that's important, we could say number 2, is staying on point. And I guess that maybe the easiest way to look at that is staying focused. There was a really cool book I read back in like the 90s called Focus. It was written by a couple of marketing guys. I think one of them was Al Rises. And it was about focus. It was about whenever you feel the need to do other things, that's when you got to pull yourself back and be focused. And they talked about that in building your business. Usually when somebody gets some form of success, they try to go, oh, we're going to go into this, and this, and start growing the company out. Mm-hmm. But the reality is you stay focused on what brought you to the party, what got you successful. Those are the things that for me, those are the things that are going to stay successful.
Right.
So staying focused, I will actually venture to say in this crazy world, what's going to separate you from everyone else is being focused. Yeah, right? With all the social media, with all the news and everything that's going on in the world today, if you can remain focused and stay focused, keep your eye on the ball, there's not much you can accomplish. So staying focused is really important. Yes, you could build a business and maybe you need to pivot a little bit. Maybe you need to do some things. You need to get up off the canvas, but stay the course. Go down the path. And maybe a good analogy of focus is moving forward down the hidden path.
Mm-hmm. Focus is one of those things that I've struggled with for a long time. In the past year, it's helped. Obviously, finally decided to go to a doctor and,
Mm-hmm.
and was diagnosed with adult ADHD.
Yep.
Looking back, at my past and things like that, there were certain things that I could focus on. Being a creative was very difficult because you're always constantly writing the story of what could possibly happen. And then overnight, you rewrite that story to all the things that could happen that are bad. So you're constantly battling. So obviously, there's things that you can take. I was prescribed Adderall, of course. But what do you think, without the medication route or things like that, stimulants or whatever it might be, what do you think are some of the things that a person can do to stay focused? What are those things that are, that are beneficial that you've seen, that you've done? I know, obviously, you've talked about when you've, you kind of locked yourself in your office at that time and just really focused on this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
That was obviously prior to social media, but there's a lot of that stuff out there now. My daughters deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure your daughter deals with it, obviously a little bit older than mine. But, focus is one of those things that is very difficult to do, especially for a long period. We're in that thing where everybody says people's focus went from 7 seconds to now like 1.5 to 3 seconds.
Oh, it's wild. Yeah. I mean, I think someone like yourself who really, I think you needed the medication, and there's nothing to be feel bad about taking the medication because you are a very creative guy. And the fact of the matter is that you realized, hey, sometimes I'm so creative that I could just keep going down this different paths.
You could live in a daydream. That's what I found myself doing, is living in a daydream and not getting anything done when it needed to get done. And then, my wife, Nikki would look at me and say, you waited to the last minute to do this. But then sometimes I would find that waiting to the last minute allowed me to get that focus that I needed instead of being able to spread it apart. But how can you, what have you seen are ways to stay a little bit more focused so it's not waiting to that last minute,
right,
and then scrambling?
Yeah, you got to be tough on yourself, right? And you got to lock yourself in. I talked last week also about creating that focused time for yourself, right? Having that time etched out and staying on point. Hey, guess what? I mean, in this world, Craig, lately, the last 10 years, being unfocused is almost a natural state of human beings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because of the news cycle and everything going on in the world and the way we're able to instantaneously get information. I have a friend that likes to have arguments with people who's right or wrong, and then he looks it up on Google,
Mm-hmm.
on his phone. And it's kind of funny because, like, people know more than, other people because they're searching Google.
Right.
So we're making things so easy for ourselves. So being unfocused is it's almost like a default now for most people. So
Mm-hmm.
so it's, and I know you well. So I knew you had a little ADHD. Not a little. You actually had
Yeah.
ADHD pretty strong. I have it a little bit. I was able, possibly for me, to be able to turn some of that off and not be there all the time. But when I was younger, it was worse. I think as I've gotten older, I'm 60 now. You're 46?
44.
44. So I'm 16 years older than you. I'd say I'd probably about 16 years ago when things started changing for me. I was actually right around the time I sold NHA. And I was definitely all over the place. I did my best. I worked hard to stay focused. I used the planner. I did everything I could. But sometimes medication is important.
Right.
You have to be able to really kind of figure that out. And you could probably talk a little bit more about that as we go on. But, for me, it's about putting time in your calendar for yourself, staying on point, catching yourself when you go off, as you know, when you go off the beaten path. Again, moving along the path is the right way to go. But when you start taking detours and start thinking about other things, right, you get stuck in a daydream. I know that really well. I mean, I definitely can relate to it.
Right.
Probably not as much. I know some people that are so ADD that they're incapacitated. I knew we had a client back in the NHA days who ran a business, and I knew things were going to go awry with him because he was so ADD.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to the point where, my God, I'd go to dinner with him and I'd be sitting in the guy's office, and he would be on a screen working. And I thought, okay, we're going to go for dinner after, I came to his office, picked him up, take him for dinner.
Right.
And about like 20 minutes in, I go, what are you working on? And he's like, I'm looking at People Magazine's top 100 people. And I'm like, I'm here to take you for dinner. What are you doing?
Yeah.
He was so lost. So that is a common theme. And we could talk a little bit more about that. I'd like to get, some of the things as we move forward, we could talk about some of those areas. But I want to stay on point.
Yeah.
I don't want to be ADHD either. So staying on point for me was being focused. That was number 2. So failure, let's go back. Failure and success, neither of them are permanent. Staying on point is something we need to do in this crazy world, unfocused world. Being focused is unique.
Yeah.
Really unique. And then the third for me is stress. Stress is good. It's okay to put yourself under some stress when you're building a business. Don't look at that as negative. You know what? These are things you're going to have to deal with. Lack of sleep, feeling a little restless. Those type of things are okay. And if you accept that they're okay, things are a little better. Mm-hmm. Right? We always talk about once you accept something, it gets a little easier.
Mm-hmm.
So the stress sometimes on a weekend when you feel like you have to work, whatever, you could say, I know this is this rage that's in me. I don't necessarily have to work. I just know that it's going on within me. And it's common.
Do you think it's in a way sometimes, especially having that entrepreneurial mindset or thinking, do you think that it's in a way doing that work or feeling that you need to work is almost kind of like purging some of that stress that you might be feeling by not doing it? Is that why sometimes we're like, we have to do this? You know,
Right.
I'm very intrapreneur more than entrepreneur in a lot
Right.
of the things that I do.
Sure.
So I do see that sometimes I will, you know, wake up late at night. I'm like, you know, let me just take care of a couple things now
Right.
so that I don't have to worry about them tomorrow. But at the same time, it's like, if I just gave myself this extra couple of hours to just relax, it's only going to take me an extra couple minutes to do it tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in a way, it somehow releases that little bit of pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's hard to, you know, be in your mind and give you, and really kind of tell you what you should be doing. I'll tell you the one thing that's worked for me is just realizing that I'm feeling a certain way. Almost every one of these entrepreneurial feelings or intrapreneurial feelings that you're having can be easily, once you accept it, it kind of goes away. It doesn't nag at you.
Right.
You know, so I would find myself being introverted a lot and not going out to finish work. My wife would go, I'm going somewhere, or I'm going to visit my parents, whatever she was doing at the time. And I would stay. I'm going to stay and I got work to do. I really didn't have work to do, but I knew I had to do something. I felt like I was like slave driving myself. But once you accept that that's going on, that's part of being an entrepreneur. Those are the things that you kind of, you know, when you accept it, you feel better. It's a weird, it's a strange thing, but once you start accepting certain things or certain feelings that are normal, I think a lot of mental stress that we put on ourselves because we think that we're unique and we only feel this way. And we're not really. There's other people that feel the same way.
Absolutely.
And once you kind of accept that, things are a little bit better. But the stress is good from a standpoint of giving you a little paranoia, making you feel like, I got to get this business moving. So there's a dose of it that you want, and then there's a dose of it that you need to shut off. And the best way to shut it off, like I said, I know I'm repeating myself, but like I said, it's just the acknowledgement that it exists within you and exists in other people too, from all the way back to every leader who ever started anything.
Right.
And then, so number 4 for me is suffering isn't optional. I always say that because you know what? If you plan to go down the hidden path, and again, the hidden path to us is the analogy of starting an entrepreneurial business, starting a company, or starting some kind of process, or being an entrepreneur, whatever it is. Suffering is not optional. You're going to suffer, and if you don't suffer, you're really not digging deep enough. So suffering is huge. It's part of the road less traveled. Original concept is, again, once we accept that suffering exists, it's not as bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a weird one, but it's an acceptance. If you do suffer and you go through this painstaking feeling of, business is going to fall apart, things aren't right, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that, you can get overboard. You gotta govern yourself a little bit, but those are areas. But I think that as you go deeper down the path, as you go deeper into the business, you're gonna open up suffering more. And part of the road less travel was talking about, M. Scott Peck talked about, if you want to seek higher spirituality, higher mindset, you want to grow as a human being, you need to suffer. And you probably, if you want to go deeper, you're going to learn to suffer more. Mm. And I'm not saying that to just be, it's not like pain is good. I'm not pushing that. You can, there's other ways to handle certain things, and there's a way to help you. One is the acknowledgement, but suffering is good, and you'll be called upon to suffer more. If you want to grow mentally, growing a business, blowing something out of the water, be prepared to go through all the process. And the process does mean that you're going to suffer. You're going to feel some depression. You're going to feel all of that stuff.
And it's because you're asking more of yourself that you're going to experience those things that are more difficult.
Things are going to be more complicated. You're going to hire employees, right? You're going to deal with employees. You're going to deal with, boy, can I make payroll this week? I mean, I don't know if you knew that, Craig, but there were weeks I worried about payroll back in the old days. There were weeks I worried about whether we were going to get paid or, whether money's going to come in, billing out to a customer. How am I going to pay my staff? So those feelings, even when you have a successful business, you still have those thoughts and feelings. So those areas, kind of rephrasing them as, failure is not an option either. I mean, failure is not is common. It's not permanent. And success not permanent. Staying on point, being focused is really unique in this world. Stress is good, and suffering is not optional. It's going to happen.
Do you think that the stress is something that allows you to sometimes focus when you have not been focusing? Because now you're in a situation where, can I make payroll for the rest of the staff?
Yeah.
And what do I need to do now to make sure that I can make sure this happens? Or this is not working out in this business, or something happened with a client, and now this could potentially ruin an acquisition from whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, okay, now I have to really get focused on this. So to stress in a way, having those things come up, I guess they can be very beneficial in some ways when you are sitting there, maybe especially if you're getting a little bit complacent, which I know, I have friends that are entrepreneurs as well. And it was one of the things that happened with my last company that, it did okay for a little while, but I got complacent because it was so easy to make income the way I was doing it. I was a solopreneur doing it from my kitchen table, more or less. I was making some decent money for what it was. Nikki, my wife, she told me all the time, Craig, why don't you start doing this? Why don't you start doing that? And I said, there's no way this is going to go away. It's been around for hundreds of years. But things changed. Technology changed. I did get complacent. I chose poorly as but that's that's one of the things when you say failure is not permanent, success is not permanent. I saw that.
Yeah.
But then again, at the same time, I had some rough times where I felt like I was failing and realized that that's not permanent as well.
Correct.
And you go into these cycles, I think, throughout and I think it's because of the failure and success not being permanent that you go into these cycles of, am I a fake? Am I, and you
the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, what you're talking about is, I think that feeling of stress and feeling that unsettling is because, I learned, it's kind of interesting because I did this, I was similar to you, and I went through the same thing where early on, I went through a bunch of failures, and I want to stress that. My 20s up to, through my early 30s, I went through a lot of stressful things. And I think I talked about it last time. It almost seemed like the same cycle I was going through. I was starting something, started taking off, and then it fizzled out. And that, around 30 years old, when I started The Road Less Traveled, that was starting to give me, it was almost like a mirror I started putting on myself and looking at myself and going, holy shit. I've been creating a pattern. I'm living a pattern here. So for me, it was, so my fear and stress always was, I'll give you, this is a weird one, but my fear and stress always was, I never want to repeat that again. And every time I felt like I was getting in that pattern, I started freaking out.
So you became aware of it, like you were saying before. You need to become aware of certain things.
Yeah, no, I'll give you a good example. When I so NHA, which was really my biggest win company that I started, you worked for me. When I started that business, it was so strange because I started the business and I rented office space, like one of these shared office. And Diane, who was with us for 15 years in that company, she was my first employee. But I remember when I was moving in with her, I put my desk in a certain spot in the office, and she was on the other side. And it brought back a memory of the same view. It was almost like a deja vu feeling, but it brought back a memory of the same way I was facing in a business that I had years before that I failed in. And I started having these weird feelings like I was going to fail again.
Mm-hmm.
And it scared me to death. Like, I can't go through this again. I'm not going through this again. You know, after about 3-4 failures, you start getting paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
And I still, to this day, even when we started Thrive, my company now, I still go back, even though this is 5 companies later,
Yeah.
I still go back and go, holy crap, I can't believe that, this is going on or that's going on. Good example, another really great example was last week during our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I got a text about a big client that we almost lost, and we had to get to work on that and straighten things out and make it work, and called upon all the things that I talked about that day to discuss and talk about with my staff on how to get that back. So it's really, really interesting. Like, it's about practice what you preach.
Right.
And I don't know if I was talking about it that day, if I would have followed through on everything. It was just so fresh in my mind that I was able to jump on that and have that conversation and do the right thing. And we're getting that client back, which is amazing. But anyway, so that really, it's, yes, stress and little anxiety and all those things are good. They're good, used the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When was it that you realized, after reading, The Road Less Traveled, building the businesses, going back and forth kind of with, some failures that you've experienced and so forth. When was it that you started to realize that I'm aware that these things are happening in my life? I'm aware that these things are happening in the business right now. I want to prevent them. I want to, maybe change the way that we have the office set up so it doesn't remind me of these past failures. When was it that you realized, and maybe you never did, maybe it just kind of happened automatically, but was there a time in your life when you realized mindset plays such a big part? Was there like a pivotal moment, something like a catalyst for that? Or was it just kind of like after a while you look back and you said, you know what? Had I believed something different during these times, things could have changed?
Yeah. No, I wish I could say it was like this divine awakening, but it was probably like smashing my head against a wall enough times to realize that I'm not doing things the right way.
Sure.
I think, I can go back to actually my wife's family who had a small business. And I remember walking in and seeing they had a small business, but it was around for a long time. And before I started NHA, and I saw their consistency. I saw the consistency of what they do in the office and what they build out. And they weren't necessarily trying to grow their business. And I think in my head, it was all about growth. I'm going to grow something big, 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 big. And, they were more about, we want to build something that lasts. Mm. And so I remember like seeing my wife's father at the time. This is, 30 something years ago. My wife's father at the time, like, running his business like it's his, prized possession. It was almost like, like cleaning the windows and, everything that he did. He had a small business, but he treated it like it was important. Mm-hmm. Not like it was important, fed him, but it was a different view on a business that I ever thought about. I think originally I created businesses, and again, I'm a purpose-driven entrepreneur now. But I realized I was barking down the wrong path of businesses when I decided that I just wanted to start something so I could make money and maybe sell it. There was no real devotion and kind of a kindred spirit. When I started NHA, which was my first success, that was based around, I told you, my grandmother, right, in the hospital. And there was a purpose to drive this business. So not only did I find the purpose, but I treated it, I shined my baby up. It's almost like, you look at a teenager buying a new car, right? And they're waxing it and shining it, and they're, and there's nothing better than that. And that's what I did to that business. And because I took so good care of the business, it took care of me.
Right.
Right. And so, again, I think it was, going back to your question, I think it was a lot of failure, and I'll say banging my head against a wall. I repeated mistakes. I think one of the things I made, and I've kept this promise to myself forever, I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm never going to make the same one. Maybe slight variations of it,
Sure.
But I'm never going to make the same one.
And mistakes also, I think, resonate a lot or resemble failure in a lot of ways. Mistakes happen, and I don't necessarily mean failure as far as a failing business, but sometimes I think people, because I do this myself, and maybe it's just sometimes because I'm hard on myself, I'll say that this mistake was a failure,
right?
Because it didn't work, and then you reach a time where you have to choose the path to be like, okay, screw it, I'm not going to do it, or screw it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
it wasn't a failure, it was a mistake. Let me learn from it and move forward. Right. On that. You said something important just a moment ago, that the business that really took off and became, like you said, your baby, NHA, that was the business that it was built for a purpose. It was built for a reason.
Yeah.
You treated it like it was the new car, type of thing. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there or wantrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs can become entrepreneurs, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But it comes down to, I'm starting a business because I need to make money, as opposed to I'm starting a business because I feel people need what it is that I offer.
Yeah.
How do you differentiate that belief?
Yeah. So that's good, because that's important. Because there is a part of building a business. You want to make money. You want to make a living. And I said this last week. That's important. You got to combine those things. You got to combine purpose. You want to create something that has a meaning, right? We all want to create something that has meaning. We want to have a legacy in our life. So it's great to be able to create a business that has a meaning. Yes, the first step is to make money so I can pay myself and pay my employees, and take care of my customer. So I don't want to confuse that with the feeling I used to get was, I want to start a business so I can make money. I'll sell anything. I'll do anything. And, I put myself out there that I would do any kind of business. I don't care. If there's an opportunity, I'm going to jump on it. That now, I don't think that way. I'm so selective in what I want to, even my investments, companies I invest in, there's got to be some purpose there. Again, that really goes back to the entrepreneur too. Mm-hmm. And I have, a lot of investments, angel investments, venture capital. I'm a partner in a VC firm, so we're investing monthly in different businesses. Ultimately, you want to find meaning in the business. Ultimately, you want to, all those things. But yes, early stage of a business, you want to pay yourself, but you're not looking just for a paycheck. That's just one step on the process of growing something.
Those other businesses, though, prior, the ones that didn't work out, there were lessons that you learned, from them, not just about this is what I shouldn't do, or these are the things that did work well. I'm going to implement them, or I'm going to put them as part of the mechanics behind the business. I guess you have to look at those things and realize that that's part of the journey.
Yeah.
Those are part of the offshoots of the hidden path that
Yep.
that you're
And
choosing.
I just want to really state, I would do all. I know at the time they were painful, but I would do it all over again
Mm-hmm.
because it led me to where I am.
Right.
It's just it's screwing up, making dumb mistakes, doing stupid things. Those were all things. Now looking back, I would do over again. I mean, night after I did some of those stupid things, I would be laying in bed going, "Oh my God, how the hell did I do that?"
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's paid off. So I'm a man that has very little regrets in my life. I really don't. I mean, I've done a lot of dumb things. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no perfect angel, but they've all led somewhere. So I think that's kind of like the Stoic belief, right? No matter what you do, you're still going down. You're going down the road.
Well, I mean, I think a common, very well-known belief mindset is, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that when you're in the moment.
No.
But if you look back, and really anybody that's listening to this right now or will listen to this whenever it is, they'll be able to look back at certain decisions that they made, certain hardships that they've experienced, whatever it might be, and realize without those things happening, I would not be where I am now. And that could be in a good place or a bad place. And that's when you can look back and say, had I made a different decision, I could be here. Had I made a better decision, I could be here, or whatever it might be. And that's when you start to look back and say, okay, how can I prevent doing this, in the future? Or how can I make sure that I continue doing these right things in the future?
Yeah, no, I look back at my life. Forget business. I look back at my life. I look back at so I was married once before. It was only about a year and a half, 2 years, very short marriage. But if I didn't go through that whole process, I never would have met my wife now, who is just, again, an amazing person. So for me, it's, all those things happen, again, for reasons, but, it's okay. Give yourself permission to fail. Give yourself permission to stub your toe. I mean, yes, I've made dumb mistakes, but they're still okay.
Mm-hmm.
They're still okay. They are what they are.
They probably affected you a lot more then, thinking
Oh,
about
it
it.
always does. Yeah.
Sitting there saying, I'm never going to recover from this type of
I
thing.
know, and I think I need to stress that with young entrepreneurs or just young people, because I'm in a business now in the behavioral health world. We work with kids that go through anxiety, depression, all these crazy areas that you wouldn't think the kids had to deal with. They're dealing with today, and maybe it's because the way the world is, but none of this stuff is permanent. And one of the reasons I got involved in this business is because we're helping, we're saving lives. I mean, and I wish it would say, yes, I'm the CEO and a co-founder of the company, but ultimately it's the people that work for me that have created this. But we've created the atmosphere of being able to go to school districts and actually work with kids and help them with their mental health issues.
Right.
And, when I talk to my employees and we have a conversation, or when I'm in front of all our therapists, I always tell them I'm so amazed at what they do and I'm so happy to be in this type of business that we're able to save lives.
Right.
So in spite of everything I'm talking about and making money and, all these things are absolutely important. And, the businesses are built to be sold. We're going to, hopefully this business that we're selling is going to be in the hands of an organization that's going to take it to the next level. And that I'm excited about. I'm excited to be able to, that's my legacy.
Mm-hmm.
I built NHA. The legacy is me going into a hospital. I said this last week, seeing people with an NHA badge on, hospital workers, thousands, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions of people that have gone through our certification. To know that I started that business and I was involved makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And it makes me live the American dream that I've been able to build something that's so strong that was able to sell, and and now it's the largest organization of its kind. It was even when we owned it,
Right.
but it's that industry has actually grown so much in healthcare. So I'm doing the same now in behavioral health, but I'm just so excited about what we've done and so forth. But there's part of me that wants, of course, I want to be successful. I want to make money. I want to build something that has huge purpose. At the same time, I love what I've been able to do.
Mm-hmm. So you, like you said, being the CEO, being the founder, trying to take the accolades for that is not an easy thing to do. Your belief is that the people that are part of the process play such an important role in the growth and in the success and in helping all of the people.
I think that's part of the imposter feeling, right? Like I feel like I'm just I'm the CEO, but I'm not doing all the great stuff that they do. There's an argument that I could say that me and my partners in this business, we set the tone for this to work, right?
Right.
With NHA, we created healthcare that saved patients' lives, that save hospital workers' lives. So we've done a lot of exciting things, but if one person just gets in their soapbox, like if I was able to have the credit for all this, that's crazy. I never would do that. I just don't. Maybe I'm trying to, keep my mind, not thinking I'm too big for my britches,
So the reason that I ask that is because I think that kind of leads into that story that you've told me a couple times regarding. I think you refer to it as the Philly story when you talk about your employees being or employees or the people behind you being the CEO and pushing everything forward. Enjoying working with your employees, realizing that they're a pivotal part in the growth, in the success, in helping all these different people. Do you feel that belief, that mindset has a lot to do with not wanting to be like that guy from?
Yeah. I've had a lot of horrible, in working, I've had a lot of horrible bosses, and I hear stories of horrible bosses all the time. So I know a little bit about, what not to do. I think a lot of my learning is not really emulating people that have done great things. I think actually my learning process has been do what not to do. I talked a little bit about my dad, who who passed away recently, and I love him. He was a character, but he made a lot of mistakes in his life. And I think he was one of these guys that had a lot of regrets, especially later in life. But ultimately, I thank him because I learned a lot from him. There was some positive, and I'm not going to, but there were a lot of negative things that he did that I looked at and go, I don't know if I want to go down that path. I don't know if I want to I don't want to have these regrets. And maybe that's a burning thing in my mind. I don't want to have regrets. So if I fail, I want to fail authentically. And if I succeed, I want to succeed authentically.
Right.
And my dad took a lot of shortcuts to try to get there. And what I've learned too, Craig, is shortcuts are actually the longer way. It's like, it's strange, but taking a shortcut and trying to beat the system creates a lot more stress than doing things the right way. So going back to the boss, not being, not feeling great about people I work for. So my Philadelphia story is one that stood out because it bothered me for a while. This wasn't a thing that just happened to me and then I recovered from it. It was something that was with me for a long time, and I kept hearing the echo of someone putting me down. So just to give you a quick, and again, I thank this guy. I hated him at the time, but I thank him because I learned how not to treat people. So the story really was I was working for a company. I was in sales. I won't get too deep into the company. Company was out of Philadelphia. I was just working sales. I was doing actually really good. The reason I ended up going back to work for someone, I just come out of a failure, a big failure in business. I was hugely depressed. Didn't think I'd ever get back on the entrepreneurial horse again. I was probably 26, 27 years old and probably 2 failures in. And one morning I just woke up and I remember saying to myself, I just don't want to be working for someone. I was actually doing fairly well, but at the same time, I wasn't happy. I felt like I needed to do so. And it's funny, you give advice to people like, don't leave a job unless you have a job. I didn't even have even an idea what I wanted to do. I was making money. I was paying my bills. So here I am throwing caution to the wind and deciding to leave with nothing. And I thought to myself, and, I don't know if this is great advice for everyone, but I did it. So I'm just basically telling you, I made a move out of a company with no life preserver, no life vest. Kind of the Tom Hanks Castaway. I got on the boat and I rowed out. But anyway, I was going to tell my boss, so I told him I'd meet him in Philadelphia to tell him I had something to talk to him about. And, at the time, he seemed okay. He seemed like a decent guy. I didn't have much. I was doing pretty well, so I didn't have much of a problem. But I went into his office and I sat with him and I said, I've decided, and he knew I was an entrepreneur and, I went through failures. And I said, I really decided I want to give it another shot. I want to go back. And I just want to tell you that I've decided to leave. And he gave me a look like I just stepped on his head. He looked at me and got up and just exploded on me. Told me that I'm a loser. I'll never have success. I'm 20, maybe I was 27 at the time, that you haven't done anything up till now. This was your only chance to be able to be successful, and you are going to be a loser the rest of your life. And to add to that, I stood there and I took the beating. And as I started to walk out, he said, "Give me the keys to the car," which was the company car. And I said, "Well, I have to go home, and I really don't have any other way to go home. So can I arrange where somebody could follow me, and I could drop off the car to you?" And he said, "No, give me the goddamn keys now and get that F out of my office." And felt so rejected.
Yeah.
He just called me a loser. It was just like everything at once. And it just hit me. I was shaking. My hands were shaking. I walked out of that office and I'm like, wow, I can't believe what I just went through. And I feel like shit.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I had nothing. I had no money on me. Even working in that company, I was just catching up on my last venture, owing money to people.
Right.
So I had no money even to go home. I don't remember how I got home. I remember it was very stressful. I think maybe I hitchhiked. It was late 80s.
Yeah.
So anyway, that voice in my head of him calling me a loser led to my next business that I started that I failed in. And his voice was just echoing in my head and led to another business that didn't go well. So I felt compelled, like he had cursed me for the rest of my life. And just when I was about to go back to that world again, maybe going back to work, I was actually applying for jobs again. This is, maybe about 3 years later. That's kind of when I got involved and read The Road Less Traveled and made a decision to change my world. And then I met my wife, met her family, saw the consistency. Boy, I want to start a business like that, consistent business and those things. And then his words became this kind of energy for me. It didn't become a negative feeling. It became energy to get me. And maybe maybe we call it a chip on the shoulder, but it was something that got me motivated to break out of that, prove that guy wrong. And I'll never forget sitting in my friend's office, my friend Fred, in his office, closing the sale of NHA. He knew the story, and he looked at me. He said, "Remember that guy who told you to fuck off?" I guess I can use those words.
Yeah, of course.
That
Especially to a guy that treated you like that.
Yeah, yeah. He told me to fuck off.
Yeah.
So the guy who told me to fuck off, he goes, "Don't you want to just like call him right now?" I go, "No." As a matter of fact, he probably wasn't alive anymore. He wasn't super young at the time. But ultimately, I almost thank him, because that was a wake-up call. Even though it tortured me for 3-4 years,
Right.
It was a wake-up call for me to prove him wrong, prove everybody wrong. I had so many reasons to prove people wrong. I was not expected to be successful. I wasn't a great student. There were so many chips I had on my shoulder, and never really talked about them, but they always drove me. They always drove me. Anytime anyone put me down or anything, I just absorbed it, sucked it up, let it bother me in the beginning, and then moved on. And to this day, any kind of situation like that happens to me, I use that as energy.
Yeah. So it became fuel.
Yeah.
To push you forward and
Yeah.
find that right thing. And I think that a lot of people, a lot of listeners or anybody, friends, family that are thinking about starting up a business or becoming an entrepreneur, or feel that kind of tug that we get that's different, that wants us to kind of go down that path that everybody else is telling you not to go down. You have friends and you have family, you have people that you look up to. And if you start to tell them about these different aspirations that you have, you don't get the whole, fuck off type of thing, but you get the, hey, you really need to do this. You really need to that. You need to go down this path.
Right. That's fuel too. Yeah.
It's the same type of fuel. I mean, not as significant as maybe but if you're constantly dealing with it, if you're constantly dealing with people saying, what are you up to now? Kind of busting your balls a little bit about it, like, oh, what's the next thing that you're doing? Or you really should go out and do this. You should really do this. You should really do it. You just get a good job, get benefits, get this, it's not worth it. It's a pipe dream to start your own business. Only the most lucky people it works out for. There's people out there right now that's what they're being told.
Yeah. And even the people that love you can hurt you in a weird way, right? Because, and not in a negative sense, but people want for you what they want for themselves, right? They want you to feel, and I do this even with my daughter, so I know I'm guilty of this as well. My daughter left a job to pursue entrepreneurial things, and I was a little, I kind of fought it a little bit. I know she's very identical to me in a lot of ways. She's gotten knocked around, which I love. And I'm not saying I made that decision. I think my wife made the decision that she's tough on my daughter, and for a good reason, because my daughter is going to be super successful because she doesn't get these benefits of daddy coddling her. You just can't, and we should talk about this at some point in some of our episodes about raising children to be entrepreneurial, whether they are or not. But being entrepreneurial means being independent, right? So raising our child to be independent. But the theory, the way I look at people that love us want the best for us, but they also do it because they want the best. They want us to do what they feel good that we're doing. So I totally get it. Comes from a loving place, but at the same time, it could really set you back because it may not be what they want for you isn't really what you want for you. So we have to kind of play off of that as well. And, friends, who make comments. I mean, I listened to comments from friends who are great friends of mine. I would never hold them back at it, but I had friends that would look at me and kind of laugh and go, "What are you doing this week? What business are you in this week?"
Right.
Especially after when I was in my 20s and me and my friends would go out to bars and stuff. They would just be like, "So what are you doing now?"
Yeah.
I'm in, let me name the companies. I'm in the electronics business. I'm in the alfalfa sprout business. I'll talk about that. I'm in, there were so many different things that I was involved in that it was just crazy. People thought I was nuts. And then when I finally got into healthcare, I mean, I'm sure I was, kind of a laugh. Like, the hell is he doing in healthcare? He has nothing. He has no background in healthcare.
Yeah.
But I kept moving forward.
Yeah.
In spite of it.
Yeah. No, I think
and used it as energy.
Yeah. No, that's huge because I think that's a struggle that a lot of people have to deal with when you're on this path. I think that's ideally when you approach me about wanting to share your knowledge as an entrepreneur, the things that you've learned, some of the opposite beliefs that you have that have been, talked about by other entrepreneurs and so forth. I think in a way, your ideal situation is how do I get this information out there to people so that people can see that
there are other alternatives.
There's other alternatives, but you're not the only one that's dealing through this.
Right.
And here, follow kind of along with what I've done. Let me let this the wake behind me catch. Allow yourself to come behind me.
Yeah.
And join this wake with me on this path, and share that so that you realize that hey, you might have some of the closest people in your life telling you you're out of your mind for trying to do this.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much what all of us have been told.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I also think that it's not just from a caring or loving standpoint that a person wants you to take the path that's most traveled. I think in a way that some people can feel a little jealous. Like, what happens if it does work out for them? I'm still stuck behind a desk in my corporate job that I can't really stand. And now you're out there doing your own thing, making way more money, being successful, helping people, whatever it might be. And I didn't have the guts to do it.
Right.
And now you did. You pushed through.
I had someone say to me when I sold NHA at 46, he was somewhat of a friend, not really, but he was a lawyer that did work for me at the time. He was older than me. And he looked at me and said, what are you selling the company for? What are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to do it again. And he goes, well, that's not common. Well, 4 companies later, it is common.
Right.
Well, for me, it's common. I made a mindset that I'm going to build, I'm going to do more. I'm going to follow this path. I'm going to continue down this path. I'm not done with this after this company. I'm looking forward to whatever the next venture is. I'm going to be involved. I'm not, I don't feel, can I retire and can I put my feet up? Sure. And do I work the same way I used to? Of course not. I'm 60 years old. I deserve, I put priorities on my life and my involvement with my daughter and trying to help her in her world and spending more time with my wife and spending more time with friends. Got a great group of friends, guys I grew up with and guys I'm close to in my town. And, I'm happy for the life I've built, but I never want to stop creating. If we're creatives, Greg, and to stop that is just doesn't feel right. So I'm going to continue down the road. I really feel like I got another early stage company in me.
Yeah.
I'll figure that out after. I'll take a breather, but after this deal. But and again, this is giving away a baby, and there's some emotion here as well because it's such a great organization what we're doing. And who knows? I mean, we're still in the middle of the deal, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. But anyway, so there's a couple of areas I found, like, for me, I was thinking about this. There's 3 areas of success. So I kind of want to share that a little bit. 3 kind of mindset areas that I think about. One is, people that are successful, I've noticed, have this, and I noticed it recently. The reason I put this together, because I noticed it in my daughter, actually talking to her. There seems to be, and I don't want to say superiority, maybe it's almost a deserving feeling that you deserve, you want to shoot higher. So my daughter said to me, Dad, I just don't want to work in a company. I know it, but I want to create something. And maybe it's my influence on her. I'm sure it probably is. But she's that type of person that wants to create something. She's got these amazing skills and she wants to create something. So I was looking at her and I'm going, wow. So the one feeling I had is that I felt like I needed to reach higher than everybody else. Like I expected something higher, and I don't know why I'm not there. So all these failures, I would hit the ground and go, I need to be up there, but I don't even know how to go. So it's a feeling like I deserve that. Yet I wasn't getting there, but it was a feeling I deserved it. But then the other 2 pieces, when you put the puzzle together, then you can figure out how it works. The other part of it is having a lot of insecurity. So you have this. So first you have the feeling that you deserve more. At the same time, you're feeling insecure. You feel a little paranoid. You feel like a tiger's biting you in the ass. Maybe it's going down the path, right? You're going down the path, feeling you deserve. I need to go down this path. I know there's success down here. I don't know where it is. And I feel the tiger biting me in the ass, and yet I'm moving down the path. And then the third, which is the thing I was missing, you were missing, we all miss, is the impulse control. Impulse control. Focus, right? So feeling you deserve it, shooting high, insecurity, tiger biting at the ass, but yet staying focused, right? So it's running from the tiger, but keeping your eyes straight ahead.
Yeah.
One thing I learned as a football player, I was a running back, and the one thing that I always remember that my coach told me is when you break into the clear, never look behind you. It's going to slow you down. Look toward the end zone.
Right.
Look straight ahead.
Yeah.
And I never looked behind me.
Yeah.
And I had some long touchdown runs, I might say, for a slow fullback. But when I broke into the clear, I knew it was also a mindset. I knew nobody's going to stop me.
Yeah.
There were times that guys jumped on my back and slid off me.
Right.
I have old films from that like give me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I had this ability to stay focused on the goal. The goal was to get to the end zone. And that's the way I feel now in business. I feel like there's that piece that nobody's going to stop me to get to.
So only look back when you're in the end zone.
And then you could do whatever you want
Yeah.
at that point, right? You could you could jump up in the air and spike the ball. And
Yeah.
dance. And no, I never did any of those things.
Would you say that feeling like I deserve this, or do you think that it's I feel like I deserve something more, or do you think it's more like I feel like I'm here for more of a purpose? I'm here for something. I'm here for a purpose. That's why I'm on this planet. That's why God put me here, and I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
I don't know where that is. These different businesses that you've started, these different things that I've done, that I've gotten involved in that didn't pay off, that, you go and you do the work, you do the things that, you think are the answer, and you hit these plateaus, these failures, these walls that you just pile into. All those things, though, at the same time, I think are education. It teaches you. It's you can go to school, you can go to college, you can learn, a whole bunch of different things, but going out and having these experiences of putting these things together becomes the education.
Sure.
So that when your friends now talk to you about, oh man, John, I remember when I used to bust your balls about this and that, and now, now you're in the process of possibly selling your 5th business. Like, I'm glad you pushed through. I'm glad you pushed through. But, can you say back, now that I look back at it, that was all part of the lessons that I needed to learn.
Yeah.
I needed to understand that was my education.
Yeah.
So when you made fun of me, that was my education to learn how to turn that, busting your balls into fuel to push you forward. But you learned lessons that you could not have learned anywhere else if you hadn't actually done them, made the mistakes, failed, succeeded, and reached all those permanent or not so permanent, things like you mentioned in the beginning.
I'm a firm believer in the mistakes and mishaps and negativeness has actually fueled me for success. I didn't look at I didn't have like a role model of success. So I had to go the hard road. But yeah, I mean, all those things happen because you're trying to figure it all out. Yeah. That feeling you deserve more. Maybe it's a calling. Maybe it's hey, I just don't want to be here on earth and not make a contribution to this world. Maybe it's that. I mean, maybe I'm thinking out loud here. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's a feeling, some weird feeling that I had that I need to be better than everybody. I don't know. I'm not sure what that feeling that you deserve something. It's not like an entitlement. It's like, I deserve something. I'm going to work for it. Right. I don't, there's a lot of interesting gurus out there that, we talked about this, embracing failure, I guess I understand what they mean by embracing failure, but hate it. Hate the mistakes. Beat yourself up for those things. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up to a pulp.
Right.
But beat yourself up to it.
Right.
But ultimately, there's so many different ways, but I learned how to do things by looking at negative things. I know that's kind of probably a bizarro world way of looking at things, but that's, I was able to make the negative right.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the best way I could describe the feeling of deserving something is the feeling that, maybe there's a higher purpose, or maybe I deserve it because I want to prove it.
Right. The next episode, I really want to touch on Jim Carrey is one that I'll talk about. He's a big believer in law of attraction.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. But he has a story of writing himself a check, keeping it in his wallet, and for $10 million, I believe, is the number that he had, and he carried that with him. And you have a similar type of, and I think that's a great thing to talk about in the next episode. But I want to finish with your thoughts on, do you believe in things like the law of attraction, or do you believe that it's more of when you start to do the things, when you start to move down that path and start to move forward, that the things that reveal themselves are what everybody kind of considers is the universe giving you those things?
Exactly. Yeah, I certainly believe in the law of attraction. I'll tell my story, which is kind of mind-boggling, what happened to me and how that kind of played out. But I will say, law of attraction is literally thinking about something and it appearing, right? So there's contemplation, and then for me, contemplation with nothing else behind it is just daydreaming. So it's contemplation with action. So there's got to be an action around what you're doing. Part of the action is going down the hidden path, right? Moving forward. And, we talked about ambiguous outcomes, but, being able to lay out an idea or something you want to achieve. And my story that I'll talk about next week really covers something I did on vacation that actually happened. I contemplated something, I worked toward it, and literally within 3 months, this wild thing happened that I thought it would happen in 7 years. So yeah, I believe in it. I'm not like this occult person,
Right.
that, because I believe in hard work and I believe in making things happen. It's great to contemplate and think about it, but you start getting into dream world when you get too deep into it. But there's a lot of proof that putting something out there and setting the path to get there really does work and happen. And my whole life, it's worked for me. This thing happened, and then I've done it multiple times, obviously, with goals. So you could see it kind of working within me, based on my, the success I've had. But there's a secret to it, and we'll talk about that next week.